Hi, everyone. This is Sebastian Traeger, Managing Director of Reliability Center, and welcome back to another episode of Reliability 4.0. As always, we're on a mission to help make the world a more reliable place, and we do that by talking to practitioners about what they're doing and how they're leveraging technology. And today, I'm especially grateful that Richard Barber with Drax Group is joining us. Richard is the Maintenance Systems Lead Engineer. Richard, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate having you on.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'd like to just start. Tell us a little bit about your role at the company and what Drax does.
So my role is we're in the condition-based maintenance team, and I'm a works management systems lead engineer. So I look after the actual system that we use for that. We use a system called Maximo for all the works management. 25 years there, just celebrated that on the 1st of November. So yeah, I'm hitting a milestone, 25
Congratulations.
years. My role there is looking within that team. So there's a team of 10 of us. We're trying to do condition-based maintenance across our power station. So I'm trying to lead that up and help push it forward in any way that we can with a bit of innovation as well.
That's great. Well, we're going to dive into that a little bit, but I'd like to just hear kind of your origin story. Some people are wondering, how did you become a condition-based monitoring expert? Is that something as a 5-year-old you just knew you were born to do, or what's kind of the origin story of how you got to where you are?
No, absolutely not. No, I didn't know really what I wanted to do out of school. And I kind of jumped onto something that we called a YTS, which is a youth training scheme. And it meant that I had to leave home at 16 and go and live in Birmingham for 2 years, go and get my basic training on an apprenticeship. And I came through the apprenticeship route. After finishing there, you went to a number of companies around the UK and Ireland, working for them for a period of time, getting lots of experience, doing all sorts of stuff. And then one of the last assignments was at Drax. I ended up contracting on Drax to start with. So you were doing 7 days a week, 12-hour shifts as a contractor, they were working as hard. And then in 2000, I got the opportunity to actually work for Drax itself. And at the time, it was just one little old power station. I say little, it's huge, but it is, a power station nonetheless in Yorkshire, north of England. And I got working from then. That's really how it started. And then it was fixing things to start with, as you do, using the apprenticeship skills. And then we'd been through a bit of a change, organisational changes. And it was basically a bit of a flat structure. So we had a president and then everybody else. And so there was a bit of chaos. So we didn't like that chaos very much. And we ended up putting a bit of a system in place and trying to get some control over it. And that's kind of where it started. We ended up doing some planning and some scheduling and trying to make everything a bit more efficient and looking at ways that we could improve it. And that's kind of how I fell into it, really. Then you do that sort of role, you look after people, you go up the tree, and everything seems to take you down the management of people sort of route.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ended up looking after compliance for a little while. We'd got some shortfalls in our compliance, so they needed someone to head that up. So did a bit of compliance, looking at how we were doing with regulations and such like. I then got into the system, the Maximo system that we use. We needed a new system, so we went out and bought Maximo and put it in. And got involved in integrating that and kind of rolling one system out and rolling one system in. So became the SME for Maximo, really, which leads me on to some of the other hats that I wear as well.
Right. I want to dive into some of that. That plant, if I'm not mistaken, is that a pretty unusual, is that the wood pellet fired plant, or is that a different one that you all have?
Yeah, so when I first started, we were still burning coal. So it had been a CEGB, which was a central electricity generating board. So it was, run by the country for the country. And there were 3 power stations in a line, all because that's where all the coal resource was, all the water resource and all that good stuff. And it was quite clear that we needed to change our strategy. And so we had a big swap round and we did a lot of testing, and we found that we could run on biomass using the same equipment that we got. So the same units would still work on biomass. We've done quite a lot of changes. So it's, if you're familiar with Only Fools and Horses in the UK, Triggers Broom. So the power station is 50 years old.
Okay.
But we've been kind of replacing stuff over and over, and the biomass journey helped us do that. So we're now fully biomass. We had 6 units, and each unit was 645 megawatts, and now we've only got 4 units, but they're all on biomass, and we're still at 645. So we're there really to bridge the gap when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing. We're there to kind of pick up the pieces so we can ramp up quite quickly. And as part of the Drax group as well, we've got hydro stations as well, of which we purchased not so long back. So we're quite well positioned for filling that niche.
That's great. That's pretty interesting that you basically retooled a plant on the fly. to go from coal to biomass.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, it was no mean feat, but we've got some brilliant engineers that kind of work that stuff out. So
It's good. Well, so you said your key role there is kind of an SME with Maximo. For those who might be listening and either using Maximo or another CMMS, maybe kind of walk through that journey. And I'd love to hear kind of 1 to 3 things that a system like that is most powerful and most helpful in, and then 1 to 3 kind of lessons learned in implementing something like that.
oh yeah. Well, we went from a legacy system, so we'd had a system that was, digital, and we'd come through from the paper to the green screens to the visual basic stuff, but it was really basic screens, and the data that you were capturing was very, very basic. And we had pieces of equipment on the plant that we had to basically take out all the vowels. We only had 55 characters to describe our plant. So if I'd got a boiler stop valve that was up on unit 1, to try and squeeze all that into 55 characters, it didn't work. So we had to chop out all the valves. It was crazy. So that system sort of came to a head. It just wasn't doing what we needed it to do from a planning point of view and an execution point of view. So we looked out there in the market, and it was a case of, right, what do we want this system to do? And we were using it basically for works management. So, someone finds a defect, you turn that into a work package, you add all the good bits that you need, how long is it going to take you, all the resources that you require, all the spare parts. So we had that, and we also had the link into inventory as well. So we were managing contracts and, buying the stock and stuff like that from within Maximo. So we used it for quite a lot of things more and above than what we could use the other system for. So we were gaining a lot of functionality. So I guess one of the lessons learned, the data that we had, it was very, very bad. We should have, at times, we should have just said, look, let's start a clean slate. One of the things that we didn't do was kind of do that. And subsequently, we had to try and find places to put it. And some of our people that had the old system for 25 years were like, no, I want it to look like the old system. So we customized it.
Right.
Which is, it's always a big no. Our partners were telling us at the time, don't customize. But, the people at the top were banging the table saying, oh, we need to customize it. So don't customize. And a lot of the new systems now, Maximo included, allows you to do a lot of the clever stuff that some business do need. You do need some little nuances. You do need some stuff that's specific for your industry or for your company. But you can do it with configuration these days, so not customizing. So make sure your data's clean. Don't customize. And I think the other thing was getting the right people involved to start with to help you on that journey, so that you understand your processes in and out, and they could then help you when it comes to the D-Day and you're putting it in. They can kind of tell the story as well. So you've got, we call them champions, but we got a few people from around the business that kind of see it right from the very outset. And they were helping us design some of the screens, and we kind of did some cloning. So we made some really simple screens for some of the operators, and some really simple screens for sort of the closeout, to try and make it really easy. People then do that sort of stuff. If it's difficult, people don't want to do it.
Right.
So they were kind of main takeaways from us, I think.
I do think one of those challenges you mentioned was a lot of times people look at technology and they think, we've already got a process. It needs to work exactly the same way in the new software. The other alternative, of course, is like, well, here's kind of the process the software suggests. And there's usually a tension there, right? And I'm probably a little bit with you, where if you can change your business practice to conform to the software, I think it typically goes better than the other way around. But it is tricky. It's a challenging call there.
So we did have that tricky conversation, and we ended up calling our system Draximo rather than Maximo, because we had customized it. And I did a presentation at one of our... So the Maximo UK and Ireland user group have got these 2 meetings a year. And my first foray into that was presenting at that. And we presented our journey about Draximo to Maximo. And we went through a situation where the only way we could upgrade, and without it costing us a lot of money, was to take out all the customization. So I spent best part of 9 months trying to re-engineer and reconfigure the system with the help of some really clever developers. Going back to the business, and like you say, your process, yeah, okay, but this product's been there for 40 years. It's got processes built in, and they do work. The world uses it, so it can't be wrong, basically.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's a very interesting trade-off. Well, let's keep moving, because I want to drill down a little bit more. So using that tool, and honestly, we can kind of abstract to any tool for what you're doing with Maximo. Again, what's most indispensable to you about that tool and in your role in particular?
Because I've always had a maintenance background, we're trying to fix things. And I think we've had that mindset that we want to try and fix things first time. It doesn't always work like that. So having a system where you can capture right from the outset. And we had, I suppose, a little bit of a gatekeeper sort of situation where, because Maximo set up for roles and it uses statuses and things like that, and our business was set up so we got operation guys and maintenance guys. So operations generally the people that break it, and then the maintenance guys obviously go in and try and fix it. But to try and figure out how to fix it, you needed some good information in there. So you needed a tool that could capture that information, be it, photographs, documents, or whatever it was. Because often, the operations guys would be out there with their cameras and go, right, I've seen a fault, take a picture, and we could capture that picture, then put it into the system, so that the next part of the process was a bit slicker. And so we were learning this all the way through. The tool had got all this information, all these functions there. We were just utilizing them. So go back to that. We've got all the sort of things in place. So it's capturing that data as effectively and efficiently as you could, so that you could look back at it and then try and improve next time. Because, we'd got certain ways of planning things, certain ways of putting these packages together. And there was always a way of doing it a little bit better. So it's having that data and being able to look back.
Yeah. I mean, and that's I think critical. And that is the huge benefit of a system like that. And that's a good segue. Our company, of course, specializes in root cause analysis. And so we like to ask all of our guests, where does root cause analysis fit into that workflow? And specifically doing that within either Maximo or handing that data off to another system.
So we've been doing it for a long, long time, but not in a really formal way. And we didn't do lots and lots of training around it. Drax is one of these places where, because of the size of it, to train everybody would be a horrendous amount. So what we tend to do was get an expert to come to site, and we'd get some training done on site and things like that. So we've not had really formal training on RCA, but there's quite a few of us within the business that are, we've been doing it, living it, breathing it. So we've got some of the tools that we use. Within the condition-based maintenance team, that's what we're all about. We're utilizing all the data that we've got, all the various vibration data, the predictive analytic tools that we've got, taking that data and then trying to, right, okay, we've seen this before. Let's try and understand what's really the cause of this. There's the basics, the 5 whys and stuff like that. We have got other tools that we could hand some of this data off to and start. We're not using it fully yet.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful.
I think this is just some of the stuff that I see on a regular basis with lots of other companies. Is we want to do it. It's kind of this. Yeah, we know it's important. We're in the muck and bullets. We're quite reactive in some ways. And I think this is where you need to kind of take a little bit of stock and go, right, to break the reactive cycle, got to have RCA in there as a bit of a tool to kind of break it. So
I want to dive into some innovation y'all are doing, because I think that's a critical idea that I think could help a lot of people. How do you break the reactive cycle? You just called it kind of break the critical reactive cycle. I think that's a really interesting phrase, because I do think that's where a lot of people sit.
I mean, I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that we've fixed it. We're still on the journey, as most people are, and some days you think we've cracked it, and some days you think we're back to square one. But fundamentally, you've got lots of teams. They've got different targets. They've got different things that they're aiming for. And so it's trying to work, operations are our customer to some extent. And we're there to try and make sure that the equipment's there when they need it to be reliable and available. So I think that there's definitely a lot of collaboration, understanding their problems, they understanding our problems. From that side of things, breaking the actual cycle, you've got to be a bit hard. You've got to kind of stand by your guns on some of this stuff. You've got to get the basics right. If you can get the basics right, you can start then seeing that we're making improvements. So it links back to some KPIs perhaps, and it needs to be a KPI that is relevant to your business. I don't think anybody has the same KPI, but it has to come from the top. So, the big boss says, right, okay, this is what we need to be doing. We need to be having proper reliability or availability, and it needs to be this. And to get that, right, okay, what feeds into that? So all the KPIs kind of at our level need to kind of feed up that way as well. So they have to make sense. So, the backlogs and things were a good barometer for us. And getting that right and kind of tracking it on a regular basis, seeing that we were making progress, is a kind of way of breaking the cycle. Planning this stuff and seeing first-time fixes. So there's always, everybody's got an experience of, we've been back to that twice and 3 times. And so there's always that sort of stuff. It's like, right, okay, let's take some of those experiences. Let's take some of those and let's fix it properly. Let's put an engineering solution in or whatever. So you're working through these things, and then you kind of celebrate that actually we've fixed something and we've fixed it properly. We've engineered that solution out, or we've changed the preventative maintenance, so we don't have that as an issue anymore. And I think that's the good thing as well, is we need to get out of the hero mentality, because we were certainly in the hero mentality.
Right.
and get back to, the heroes should now be the condition-based maintenance guys that are flagging this stuff before it's broken. That's kind of the challenge for us. So we're not there yet. We're on that journey, but I think
the journey.
Get the basics right, be prepared to, challenge. You're definitely going to have those challenges, but celebrate those wins, get those, low-hanging fruit, but get some of those ones that people
Absolutely.
have seen as visual ones that are real problems and fix those.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, basically take your small wins and turn them into bigger wins and keep promoting those wins to build that. Well, it's been great talking to you. Before we wrap up, I know there's some real exciting innovation going on there as you're about to introduce kind of Sparky the robot dog. Tell us a little bit about what that initiative is, what you're doing, and what you're hoping for.
So it was a while ago now, probably 18 months ago, when we made the decision to purchase it, and it was through, I guess, the user group again. Friends of ours, they were doing some stuff down there and showing us the benefits in this. And basically, it's got a camera. You can have different cameras, different payloads that can capture information and different data. So we'd seen a use case, certainly on our power station, where we've got boilers that are very hot. If we get a steam leak, it's very high pressure steam, very dangerous to put people in there. So we wanted to be able to see how bad the steam leak was. How could we do that? Well, we could send a robot in there using a tablet, and I could see what the robot sees. And that's basically how we justified purchasing one to start with. If we lose a unit, we're getting to dark nights, cold days and things like that. Sometimes the wind's not there, sometimes the sun's not there. We need to be there. The price of electricity is through the roof. If we get a tube leak, we need to try and keep it on as long as possible. So if we can send the robot in, assess the steam leak, see how bad it is, we can then make a decision about whether we can maybe keep it on till the weekend when it's a bit cheaper to take the unit off. So that was the main justification for it, and that's from a safety aspect and from a cost avoidance sort of point of view. Then you start looking at, well, we've got lots of other use cases for it. So because it's got a camera, and because it can walk around in an autonomous way and take not the same picture, but from the same position, it can take another picture. And you can then start trending that information. So simple example, we've got 40 compressors in a building. They've each got a gearbox oil sight glass. We don't take anything from that apart from a visual. An operator might walk in there perhaps once a day and have a quick look. If we can take an image of that, we can then start trending to see if the levels are coming down, and we can set some alerts within Maximo to say, look, we probably need to go and top it up with oil, or is there a reason why that's losing so much oil over a period of time? And then we've also got some LED readouts, which again don't go back to the control room. So it's reliant upon someone taking some notes or scribbling some notes down about the temperatures. If we can take the image of that, we can then convert that using machine learning and things like that, running it through a model to then give us some digital readings, which then again we can put into our CBM system and trend that data. So we can then start looking at, well, there's something wrong with it. We don't know what it is yet,
right? But
it's giving us the early alerts. So that's the power of what we're doing. And because it's autonomous, we can set it off in this room, and it'll go and take all these images from all these compressors. And when it's finished, it'll come back, and then we can take it and go and put it on charge and download the data and go from there. So things like that. And then you start looking at compliance, where I could be looking at a fire extinguisher, for example. Has it got its little tag that tells me, a yellow tag means that we've tested it in 2024. It's due to be tested again. It's got the wrong colour tagging or something. So there's little things like that. As it's walking around the plant, we can have it doing compliance, all sorts of things.
Well, Richard, I can't wait to hear about the results that you get from Sparky. When exactly does that go live for you all?
So I'm hopeful the next few weeks we'll get sign off from our cyber teams, and then we've got all the models ready to go. So it's just, I would say next couple of months, we'll definitely have information that we can start utilizing.
That's amazing. Well, I'm a part-time robotics coach for my kids' team. So I'm just blown away by how robotics is going to make a meaningful impact in all kinds of areas of life. And it's neat to hear you guys using that. So we might have to have you back on in 6 months once you have some use cases. Well, thanks so much, Richard, again, for your time. We really appreciate you participating with us on this podcast. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, and again, this is Richard Barber with Drax Group. And if you're in the Maximo UK group, definitely encourage you to check out this podcast and get to know Richard better. And really, to all of our listeners, we're about helping reliability engineers and really anybody take steps to using technology successfully in their work and to do innovative things. And of course, our company. If you're looking for RCA training or resources and materials, please check out reliability.com. And if you're looking for software to help you do root cause analysis, check out EasyRCA. Well, that's all the time we have today, folks. Thank you. And let's go forth together and make the world a more reliable place. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.